All right, so 112. I'm still talking about Unit 1 and the plague. The plague is really important because it's a game changer. Okay, it's a really game changer, and you have to realize that because these people don't know necessarily that things like germs. They don't know it's the rats. They can eventually figure out it's the rats, but what they do know is it's hitting an awful lot of areas and it's killing an awful lot of people. It is you might feel fine in the morning. By lunch you might have a cough. By dinner time you're oozing blood, and by bedtime, well, yeah, you don't have a bedtime anymore because you're dead. It moves that quickly and it spreads that quickly. And so what we have is this: they're going to have a lockdown. They're going to shut down the theaters. They're going to close down the towns, and it will take over some areas. But the problem is, it's going to kill off 2/3 of the people, regardless of age, regardless of sex, regardless of social class. I mean, you're going to have rich folks that live in the upper part of town, up in the hills. They're going to die up there too, and they're going to lock up their houses and they're going to shut things down. But the thing is, the problem they're going to have is that rich folks don't live by themselves. Rich folks have workers that come in. They have cooks, they have butlers, they have maids that come in, and these people don't live there necessarily, or if they do, they live there part-time and they live in other parts of town the rest of the time. They're going to take and bring this disease with them. And so it's going to hit an awful lot of people. What's important about this is huge, because going into this, the church is in charge. Governments come and go, religion stays, the church stays. That's the mainstay. The church is in control of a lot of things. Obviously, it's in control of the faith. It has its hand in the government. It's got its hand in politics. It's got its hand in banking. And it's got its hand, well, its hand is teaching. It is the business of education along the way. And so it is defining a lot of things at this particular point. Well, when people start to die, and people die on a large scale, the church is going to say, it's God's retribution. That you're being punished because you are a sinner, and this is a divine vengeance upon you. And so people are going to become more devout. People are going to become more sanctified. They're going to be coming to church. They're going to be going ahead and donating to the church. They're going to be showing up to the church, and because it's only the sinners dying. But the problem is, it's not only the sinners dying. Lots of people are dying, good and bad alike at this particular point. But this initial thing is going to give the church more power. Well, you got to know a couple of things. Up until this point, inheritance is based on something called primogeniture. Primogeniture is the oldest male relative gets everything. So again, if you are the oldest female and you're the oldest child in the family, sorry, you get nothing. Little brother gets everything. Okay? Or if there is no little brother, then your closest cousin, your closest male relative. And again, if dad doesn't have a son, part of primogeniture in many places is, as the oldest female relative, you are required to marry your closest male relative who's going to inherit and give birth to your dad's heir. Odd system, but the thing is if you're the oldest male child, you get everything. Now, if you were the second oldest male child, doesn't work out nearly as well. But if dad is reasonably wealthy, if the family is reasonably wealthy, he might be able to buy you a position in the military. You can be an officer in the military, for the right price. If you're third in line as far as the guys go, man, if dad's got enough money, if he's got enough land, he might be able to buy you a position in the church. Okay? He might be able to buy you a position in church. If you're fourth in line, I'm sorry, you are just a spare. The odds of you having a future that you don't go out and find for yourself are pretty negative along the line. Well, this is going to affect primogeniture in one way. What's going to happen is people are going to start to subdivide estates to a certain degree, and they're going to start leaving wealth to the church. You're going to leave land to the church. You're going to leave money to the church because of what's happening with the plague. And the idea is to kind of ease your passage into heaven, kind of grease the gears. It's like, hey, Padre, if I leave you a chunk of land, will you say a prayer for me and cook a couple of Ave Marias and lighten the load of my heart and my soul and pass me into heaven? We got that. Okay, good. And so this is going to make the church incredibly wealthy. In some areas of Europe, The church is the number two landowner. Sometimes they're number one, but number two next to royalty, next to the king in some places. This makes them wealthy. Well, what happens is this. If you're Catholic, and I grew up Catholic, one of the things you have to know is there's certain things you can't do without the church. Number one is you can't be christened. You have to be baptized. You got to be christened. And so can't be properly born without the church. You can't get married without the church because you have to have that sanctification. And you also can't die without the church because you have to be shriven of your sins. You have to have last rites. And so what's happening is people are dying. And people are dying in such a way that the church is going to show up. The priest, the padre is going to show up, and he's going to go ahead and hear their sins. They're going to go ahead and be shriven. But the problem is that people are going, and they're oozing, and they're breathing, and they're coughing all over the place. What's going to happen to these priests? Because we know it's just not the sinners dying. There's good people dying because the rats are carrying this, not, evil spirits. Well, priests are going to start to die, and as priests start to die and members of the church start to die, people are going to go, hey, I thought they said it was God's retribution. I thought they said it was sinners dying. How come the church people be dying? How come the priests are dying? How come the bishops are dying? How come this is affecting the church? And what this does is this is going to cause a faith quake, right? A faith quake. There's going to be repercussions. And the repercussions are really what this is all about, because not only are going to people start to question the church, they're going to start to question church doctrine, they're going to start to question church ideals and church authority, and that's going to cause problems for them even later on. But it's also going to see the birth, this questioning is going to be the birth of part of the Renaissance movement, right? This reawakening. We're also going to see a rediscovering of some classical learning along the line. But also, what happens is this, because, again, in some cases, 2/3 of the people are dying, it turns out that it used to be, listen, you were going to be whatever dad was, right? That you were going to stay in the same line. So if you were a poor farmer, dad was a poor farmer, you're going to be a poor farmer. If dad was this, that was this. We had servants, we had serfs, we had peons. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be, suddenly where we were overpopulated, now we're underpopulated. Suddenly, when there was an abundance of workers, now there's a shortage of workers. Now what's going to happen is people are going to start shopping around for workers. So if you are one of the surviving people, then you are prime beef at that particular point, because people are looking for you so you can negotiate a wage, you can negotiate a job, you can negotiate a settlement. That's something that doesn't exist before. So you have an economic imperative to make your life better. Also, there used to be a certain social structure that was locked in via royalty, via nobility, and no matter how much money you had, there wasn't space for you to move up. Well, now money can buy levels. Now money can buy standing. And so that's a huge part of what's going on as well. When you combine this with what's happening with the church and people are starting to question, we're looking at significant changes socially. We're looking at significant changes economically. We're looking at significant changes in the church and the structure that's involved with this. And so what we look at is we look at the birth of the Renaissance. The Renaissance is a questioning of what people know, of what they believed, of what they've seen, whether it's an exploration through art, whether it's an exploration through literature, through philosophy along these lines. They're going to explore new areas, and these exploring of new areas is going to be furthered by the exploration of other areas. We start to look at this point as we don't forget trade. Trade was a good thing that lined people's pockets. It was a good thing that helped people find these new markets and things. And so what's going to happen is part of this introduction or reintroduction of classical learning is going to be also the exploration of certain things like maps, like other beliefs along the line that say, hey, well, look, we can go ahead and look other places. Maybe the church was wrong about certain things. And so we start to see the exploration of different areas and different beliefs. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that.